So in the last few years, there's been a passage that's growing in popularity within evangelicalism. It's in Isaiah 58. It's growing in popularity for good reason. It's this passage where the people of God are frustrated with God because amidst all of their worship, he's not responding. They're like, listen, we've fasted, we've tithed, we've sang, but you're not interacting with our worship. And God ends up declaring to them why. He says in verse 2, it's because they're not acting in righteousness. Now, this is important because God's declaration to them is very simple. You're doing all of these things that have to do with you. And that's to some point that's okay, but you have forgotten that your worship also needs to be outward. That's a part of worshiping me. I am a God of the nations and I care about, and I've blessed you to be a blessing. And so what he ends up doing in Isaiah 58, and I would really encourage you to read it, is he gives them these if-then statements. Essentially what he says is, I'll be with you if you do this. Now, it's not a form of conditional love. Just listen to what he says. He says, if you take care of the poor, if you feed the hungry, if you bring in the sojourner into your home, if you look at people who are without and you provide for them, if you care about justice, if you see the afflicted, all these things, people that are outward, outside of you that are in need, if you see them, then I will. And listen to what he says. Then shall your light rise in the darkness, and the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your desire and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden. Listen to what he says. You want strength, you want stability, but it's found in taking care of others. And this has been God's MO in the Old Testament constantly. What we find is God telling his people to give up their resources over and over towards those in need. A great example of this would be if you just look at the Levitical law and the way that he processes land, right? He tells us, for example, go through 3 books, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers. In Exodus, he says, look at the poor around you, take your land, and this is what I want you to do. Every 7 years, I don't want you to harvest. Whatever grows, grows. And here's what he says, I want you to leave it for the poor. In Leviticus, he says, I want you to cut your field in a certain way because I want the corners to be left for the poor. He then says in Deuteronomy, as you go over and harvest all of your grains and all of your crops, don't go over a second time because I want you to leave it for the poor. Now, over and over, he's saying this because, and it's probably difficult for us to get, land is a resource. It's an economic process for them to be able to do what they're doing with harvesting. It's the way that we see our finances. And what he's saying in a nutshell is very simple. I want you to be intentional with the resources that you have to give to the poor. I want you to be intentional with these things. Of course, without question, as believers, we follow in Jesus Christ. He doesn't just take this in law. He lives this out and calls us to do the same. For us to be intentional with what we have. Pella Communities operates in a mission model to be in low-income areas to serve those in need. Now, we have intentional plans to work with the City of Glendale, Young Life Glendale, the Phoenix Rescue Mission to serve those all around us. As a matter of fact, in 1 square mile around us, there are hundreds of homeless people in need. Just less than a mile west of us, there's more than 30 countries represented in refugee programs within the United States. Here's the thing, and here's why this matters. We've got to be intentional about this. There comes a point where we've got to stop just talking about doing something, and we got to do something. I mean, we love gathering in our communities. We love getting together on Sundays and singing. We love to worship together. These are great things and beautiful things that the Church of God should continue to do. But I think a little bit of my worry is that us and maybe the American church at large is becoming dangerously close to Isaiah 58, that we do all these acts of worship, but we don't care about those in need around us. We're not worshiping the way that we're supposed to worship. And so that brings us to this building and what we're trying to do. Because the reality is, some of us say, hey, I want to give to the poor, but our bank accounts say otherwise. Some of us say that we want to give our time to those in need, but our calendars betray us and they condemn us a little bit. And the reality is, if we step back, and not from a place of condemning or not from a place of guilt, but just from a place of acknowledging that every dollar we have, we will be held accountable for what we did with to God. And so in love, I'm standing here in this building to tell you what Pella Communities is doing for us to participate as Pella Communities and anybody who wants to join in this mission. And so, practically speaking, here's what we want to do. We want to raise $200,000 before Easter. The reason we want to do that is we've decided to purchase the building that we're in here in the heart of downtown Glendale, which is 6,200 square feet, to be Pella Communities' first mission. 6,200 square feet is not a lot. So we're going to be intentional 3 different ways in how we navigate what it means to be down here. Number 1 is we want to be an economic blessing to those around us. The business owners in the city, obviously, rightfully so, is probably worried that we want to do ministry out of this space, because what does that mean for drawing in the homeless, as they don't want people to loiter around their businesses. So how do we navigate navigate that. Number two, we still want to do that ministry, right? We still want to invite people in. We want showers to take place. We want this place to be used for Young Life Glendale. We want to continue to provide space to give meals out and all these different things. And then number three, we want to use this place for the gathering of the saints, as missions of old were used. On Sunday morning, we want to shut everything down and have the church gather here and invite all those that we've been ministering to come join us. So here's what this looks like in the 6,200 square feet. We first want to build out some space in the back as 4 classrooms and like a makeshift lobby to be used multiple different reasons, but our kids' classrooms on Sunday mornings. Then we want to build a larger venue, a venue for the city that we'll use as a sanctuary on Sunday. And then in the front of the house, we want to build a coffee shop. So here's what we want you to know from this point watching this video. In our goal to raise $200,000 by Easter, we're going to break this up into 2 different sections as we build this out. First, we're going to build the 4 classrooms and the sanctuary before summertime. And then we're going to build the coffee shop before the end of summertime. Now, we want ministry webbed within all of these, right? To answer those 3 big questions of the economy, how do we serve those around us, and how do we use this church on Sunday? Well, let me give you an example. The coffee shop will be used in such a way that the students from Young Life or those who've aged out of the foster care system, those in need, they'll be able to come in and serve and work, earning credits in our coffee shop. The large use facility will be used for Young Life on a weekly basis. The classrooms in the back will be continued to use for ministry almost daily for the homeless. We have a small prep kitchen that we want to use to serve and do ministry out of. We'll have a shower that we'll offer to those who need. We have an office space that doubles as a cry room. So there's all these little things being used. And so what we want to do is continue to provide space that's multiple use. But hear me when I say this. I would not be asking you for money if I did not believe that this really was for the ministry work that God has called us to do. This matters for us to move forward in this for multiple ways, but you got to understand this is something we got to do together. This is not something that just one of us can do. We have to rally and begin to pray, God, what does it mean for us to use our resources to serve our community in this way? We all have to be about it. My prayer for you would be that you would take some time, put before the Lord what God is calling you to give to this mission so we can worship God together in this way. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.